All right, so every once in a while, I will put this post up on my Facebook page, and you guys will leave comments about what you want me to talk about on Monday Coffee with the Doll. And I go through the comments and I pick and try to answer as many as I can until the post kind of goes silent, and then I'll repost it again and we will start all over. So I thought that this was a great one that goes with our main topic. I try to pick things that kind of coincide with maybe the discussion that I'm having, and I thought that this was a really good one, and it is from Gary Jordan, and he says, I had time to think about your question. He said, you should talk about people who are fake, and in having to be so in order to be glorified, they end up mistreating people who care about them and throwing those people away. I think that this is a really great question, Gary, and I think that it's really interesting because I think that it's something that a lot of people can relate to. I think one of the most common toxic personality traits or complexes that you will come across in life are people who are fake. Now, I think that there can be different levels of this. I think that there's people who it's a type of coping mechanism and it's a type of filter that they kind of put over their own personality and who they are, because maybe they struggle with imposter syndrome and they are afraid to be themselves and they're afraid to show people who they are because they feel like they'll be judged or they won't be accepted. I just watched the Anna Nicole Smith documentary on Netflix. I like to watch those documentaries because I think that Netflix is, in a sense, I'm going to say this, I kind of feel like Netflix puts out documentaries almost to try to take control of society's idea of a situation, because a lot of people put a lot of stock in Netflix documentaries and what Netflix puts out, and when a new documentary comes up, everybody's like, we have to watch it, right? Like they did the one on Marilyn Monroe, which was really interesting to me because I feel like there was a lot that just wasn't talked about, and I feel like they tried to kind of navigate the perspective of a situation that happened without necessarily always being factual and true. I don't think that's necessarily the case with the Anna Nicole Smith documentary, but I did see a person who seemed to kind of be struggling with imposter syndrome. She very much portrayed herself in a way that she thought would be beneficial for her and how she would be able to get the things that she needed and deserved for her and her child. And she portrayed herself in a lot of ways that were not necessarily true to, I think, who she was as a person, to secure that way of life and to secure something that she felt would ultimately fill that hole in herself, even though it was to her own demise. But I think that there's also a lot of people out there who are fake because they just are toxic. Now, I think that people who are like you said, fake and in having to be so in order to be glorified, and they end up mistreating people who they care about and throw them away. I think that there's a lot of hurt people out there, and hurt people hurt people. With that being said, I don't think you should necessarily allow hurt people to hurt you. At the end of the day, we're all accountable to our own behaviors and choices, especially when we project those onto other people and we hurt other people in doing so. Did you see that gnat land on my nose? I sound like a crazy woman talking about this gnat. I think that people who portray themselves in false lights and with false narratives to be glorified or loved are dealing with attention complexes and are dealing with acceptance complexes and maybe dealing with feeling like they were never paid attention to or glorified by anybody else, so they feel like they have to portray themselves in a false narrative or in a false way to get that validation. And I think that at times that can really hurt a lot of people. In the pinup industry, there's a lot of women that portray themselves in a false light at the expense of others, so they can be glorified and they can be seen on some type of pinup queen pedestal where they're better than everybody, or they're more pinup than somebody, or they deserve more credibility in the pinup scene, when secretly they are maybe not the prettiest behaving individuals, but to others they try to portray themselves as such while they're secretly bullying people. You know, I've dealt with groups of women who have portrayed themselves as people who stand up against bullying and are very anti-bullying, and they create these entire pinup groups to present as anti-bullying when in the shadows and, you know, in places that they feel other people can't see them, they're bullying women to such an extent that those women want to kill themselves. So I have dealt with a lot of people who will behave in false ways to who their character really is, so they can seek validation from being glorified by other people at the expense of others. And I think that those are huge complexes, but they're complexes that are issues that they have to seek help for. You can't do anything about that. You know, I think that when it comes to those types of personalities, the more that people try to speak out against them and like out them, the more violent and aggressive they can be in how they hurt others to secure that identity, that false identity that they've created for themselves. People like that tend to have no limitations to hurting other people. And they will at all costs try to secure the identity that they've created that they feel like other people see. And they will do anything to secure that. And they can be as cutthroat as possible. And the problem is that the more you try to actively combat that and try to like speak out in defense of like maybe yourself, those people will continue to get dirtier and dirtier. Are you willing to get dirty? Are you willing to stoop to the level that they're at to try and defend yourself against things that are usually being said that are not accurate or true? I tell people all the time, you know, there's a lot of people out there who will lie and be false to secure a narrative that they've created about themselves towards others. And the more you defend those lies and those false narratives that people are creating about you, the more you're feeding that monster. A lie is a lie. And the more you try to defend yourself against these things, the more you feed that lie. If it's not true, it's not true. It's not true. It's done. You know, I had an entire group of women come at me once to try and paint me in a false narrative that was so against my character and against who I was, and they worked really hard to socially smear me, and they kept putting out more and more stuff that they had made up to try and make me look bad. And I ignored it because it wasn't true. You know, if somebody goes out there and says, Emily, this is terrible, Patricia's like, say this, Emily sucks wet farts out of dinosaurs' assholes, I'm going to laugh. It's not true. Do I really need to go out there and get on my pedestal and grandstand about how I don't do that? Thanks, Patricia. That was a terrible example, dude. Gosh. No, I don't, because it's a lie, because it's not true. And the more that you go out there and you try to like express the truth on these situations, the worse they tend to get and the messier they tend to get. And then you just end up looking as bad or worse than this person, because this person is willing to lie and cheat and steal to create that false narrative about you while protecting this fake identity that they've created about themselves. So the more that you don't feed that beast, the more that those types of personalities will go away. And people like that need to seek professional help, because there's nothing, like, I am the first to be like, I'll hold you accountable. You're a liar. This isn't true. I'm done. And then I move on. Those people will peacock and their feathers will get ruffled and they'll be like, yeah, but that's not true. And then they go out and they try to make up a whole bunch more BS. Okay, let them go out there and make fools of themselves, because at the end of the day, real people are going to see the reality of the situation. And when it came to those girls for me, I had 1 million people in my inbox letting me know that they knew the truth of the situation and to not worry about it. And I didn't feed the beast, and within a week, the beast was bored and moved on. So I think that if people want to be fake and they're willing to mistreat others to strengthen the fake identity that they feel validates them, those aren't people that you need in your life. If they are willing to throw away good people who love them and care about them but are calling them out for this. You have to let people walk that path, and you need to do your healing and move on, because sometimes those relationships are relationships that you don't want to lose, and it hurts really bad to have to lose them, but you don't have to stand up to being treated like that. Like, you don't just stand there and let somebody do that to you, period. You are worth more than that. Is it going to suck? Is it going to hurt sometimes to step away from those relationships? Well, of course. But the relationship that you're grieving of that person isn't a relationship you get to have anymore. So by staying around, you're just a glutton for punishment at that point. You know what I mean? So that's my advice, Gary. I hope that it helps. If it doesn't, I apologize. I shouldn't be giving anybody advice. I don't really know what I'm talking about for the most part. I just kind of talk and tell you how I feel about things. So that's how I feel about it. Oh, what? That's my imposter syndrome. Hey, yo, go figure. I'm a little sussy. These little sussy in here. Do, 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 do.